Use the code CHICKEN in the shop.
Guys, we're back with part 2 of the Warships tier list series. Today we're going to finish off from where we left off of yesterday. If you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. It'll be the most recent one, part 1 of this, where we've ranked. We've got to the point where we're at now. So I have not seen your comments yet at the time of making this, so apologies. But we're going to keep trucking along here. We're going to keep trucking along. So if you guys like videos like this, make sure to let me know down below in the comments and leave a like on the video if you want to see more. And we will be back. We'll be back with some fresh stuff probably tomorrow, wrapping up the season. And I'm making this video like a week in advance, so I don't know what's going on at this point. So, yep. The future chicken. But yeah, so let's dive back into it. So next up, we've got boom cannons. Boom cannons. So I would say boom cannons are a B tier. Unlock. You could make the argument that they're A tier. What else do we have in the A tier? But I feel like they're just underneath. Like if it could be this close, it would be this close. Boom cannons are great. Typically, they are a little bit of a push point, and they help slow down everything. So very, very good defense, just not quite an excellent defense, I guess. Actually, you know what? I take that away. They are an excellent defense. Boom cannons are usually a push point. For that reason alone, I think because they're early on, they deserve to be in the A tier. Troop damage. So troop damage, I'm actually going to put into the S tier. I believe troop damage is one of the best stat nodes that you can unlock. And not only that, there's never a bad time to get troop damage. There's never really a season that at least I can remember where you unlock troop damage. It's like, that didn't do anything. Like, it always increases your times. It always, either ranks you up or gets you closer or doing better, or at the very least, it's, maintenance tech so you don't drop. Troop damage, one of the best nodes in the game. I would say it's probably top 5 if you had to do something like that. Next up, we've got the Sky Shield. Now, this one's tough. Now, the way I'm going to do this, actually, it's not the Sky Shield. I just lied. This is all prototype defenses. So I would actually put this as an S tier as well, because they make such a difference. They have such a huge impact, especially at level 3. Now, yeah, I mean, the thing is, this one, I just didn't have pictures of all of them, and I could only upload 50 images, so that's why we're doing all prototype defenses in one. I mean, they can go from S to E, depending on which one you pick and where you're at in the season. I think for that reason, I'll put it as A. But, I mean, the Sky Shield's so impactful, drastically changes base building, drastically changes the attack strategy, and they always make a pretty large impact wherever you're at in the season if you can unlock a level 3 Sky Shield and throw it down. Next up, we've got the Warriors. So the Warriors are interesting. I'm going to put them as B, and yes, I don't typically play Warriors, so maybe a little bit of bias coming in here, not putting them in A. But I just feel like the thing with Warriors is, which kind of goes against this season because they've been, pretty viable all the way up until 6ER, which is not usually the case. The thing with Warriors is usually they're hot for a minute. That's what I always say, right? That's what we always talk about is, typically we don't bother getting Warriors at 3 engines because they're not good for the long term. They don't end up being a good choice overall. If they're on the path, like they were this season, and you have to get them, and they're viable for a long time, and then you can just transition all the stuff you're using with Warriors to rocket choppers, then yeah, absolutely, they can be, a great pickup that can get you farther. But I think overall, from the seasons that we've seen, it's not typically like that. So I'm going to place Warriors in the B tier right here. So next up, we've got flamethrowers. So flamethrowers are an interesting one. I'd say they're a very strong defense. If we're going to put boom cannons in A, I feel like flamethrowers need to be, I don't know. The thing with flamethrowers is, again, they're usually very strong early on. Boom cannons, I would say, if we're doing that comparison, why they're in A and why flamethrowers are in B. Boom cannons are always very strong for the entire season, and they always help, and they're always one of the things you're looking out for. Flamethrowers, not so much. Typically, unless you're using Seekers, you can kind of just avoid them at the end of the season. They're good just for having the extra buildings out and that kind of thing. But yeah, other than in a Seeker meta, sometimes they're not they're not as valuable to have out, whereas boom cannons, even in a seeker meta, for dealing with heavy choppers or for just straight up killing seekers, they can be useful. So I think flamethrowers will come down a notch. Still very good. Next up, we've got critters. Critters, I think, are tough. Again, kind of subjective, depends. They're very good when they're very good, and then sometimes you don't use them as much, but they're always a good pickup in general. So for that reason, I'll put them in the B. I think I don't need to really explain that anymore. I don't remember. I feel like they're not like super good or excellent, but they're good and they're not bad. So they're kind of in that middle. I think B is kind of the perfect spot for them. They can make a huge difference. They can make a huge impact. Typically that's short-lived, or we're using them to clear mines and really nasty fizzle metas, and they make a big difference and allow you to clear and that kind of stuff. But other than that, not overly impactful. So next up, we've got gunboat energy. Gunboat energy I'm going to put as B. Typically, we don't unlock all of these during the season. Do you need them? Absolutely. Are they good? Absolutely. Do they make an impact? Sure. I don't think, it's not typically you get the GBE and, that turns whatever you're using into a push point. I think it can make whatever you're doing a little bit easier on offense. And for that reason, I'll put them in the B tier because they're not, super impactful, but they're definitely a good pickup. Grens is a tough one. Grens I'm actually going to put down in C. Some of you might not like that, but the thing with Grens is more often than not, they're a key vacuum. We've used them in the last couple seasons just to get out of fizzle metas, but that's typically the only time we're using them. They're very slow, kind of boring to use. They can be satisfying, pretty frustrating. This season they probably got more use than, throughout the season than any other season. But I think they deserve to be in C, kind of on par with the Scorcher Troop. Can be viable for a minute, but typically that's about all we see out of them. So next up we got boom mines. So this is a tough one. I wouldn't say it's A. I think boom mines are a good fit for B because, you're not winning matches usually because you have boom mines. Yes, they're helpful. We typically always have to get them at some point. They're good, not amazing. Pretty rare that, we're doing a fizzle meta and you need boom mines to really push you forward. Sometimes that does happen where you unlock boom mines, you get to rank 17 super early, but not always the case. Next up, we got building health. So building health is arguably the best node in all of Warships, I would say. So this is definitely an S tier node because it has such an impact on the gameplay, such an impact on the attack strategy, and typically that's what we're gunning for, is to get to 70R in building health at the very end of the season, usually, right? So for those reasons, I would go S tier for building health. And I'm going to throw troop health up here as well. I'm going to throw troop health up in the S tier. Troop health makes such a difference. That's why we've been complaining so much these last few seasons, because they have not given us enough troop health early on for the troops to be allowed to survive. Typically, it's always a push point. Maybe we could make the argument to move it down to A tier in a more balanced season that doesn't require you to, have a ton of troop health just to be able to simply stay alive and complete these bases. But that's not what we've seen the last few seasons. So troop health, I'm putting it in S tier. Very, very important. Next up, we got rocket launchers. I think rocket launchers have to go as an A defense. They're always very good usually. Even towards the end, you want to have rockets to kill bombers. You want to have them to mark up the seekers, and it's just never a bad thing, especially max rocket launchers. And max rocket launchers, if you get them early, you could probably make the argument that they could go into S tier, but I think they're a high A, one of the better defenses. Then we have medics. Medics is going to be the first thing I put down in the E list, E tier. Because 95% of the time they're a vacuum and we don't use them, and they're just kind of on the tech tree just to have another thing to unlock. I mean, I know some people use them this season. I know a lot of the stuff that I've got over this tier list, it was a bad season for the examples that I'm using. But more often than not, we unlock medics and we don't use them, and we definitely don't usually upgrade them. So I've done it in the past, but it's very, very rare that we have a meta that involves using medics. Because typically it's all about base race or surviving or getting one engine, and yeah. So I'm going to put medics all the way down in E tier. You guys let me know what you think about that. Next up, we got mortars. Mortars are definitely B, I would say. Not amazing, not bad, but they can definitely be very good sometimes. Again, especially early on if we're doing like heavy zookas something. It's just a good, strong defense to have. You know, they'll clip up bombers in the end of the season. They do splash damage, so they're helpful against seekers, and that kind of thing. So, next up, we have multi-nodes. Now, this is tough to do as a generic kind of thing, but multi-nodes can be very good depending on obviously what's in them. Um, I don't remember specifically if we've ever had, a multi-node that's like a huge game changer. I guess this season we've seen the one at the end. I think it's actually this one I got the picture of. It was the extra shock launcher, which is pretty huge. So I'm going to put them in C because it's kind of a wide sweeping thing. I mean, it could technically contain anything. So it's hard to say it's good or bad, but usually they're okay. They're not a bad pickup, but the only bad thing about multi-nodes is typically you don't want to take them early on. You want to hammer out all the good stuff on the path first, then come back, get your multi-nodes, and get that kind of stuff. Flares is a tough one to say because, I mean, it really just depends. I mean, I think they're so important, but they're so boring. I think I'm going to put them in... Yeah, I'm gonna put them in the A tier actually, just because they are pretty impactful. You know, when you think about it, like heavy rush with flares, like you gotta get flares. You can't really go that long playing warships without flares. So I mean, pretty self-explanatory. You just gotta have them. Zookas. This is an interesting one. I'm gonna put Zookas in D because we do use them sometimes, like the mechs and the Cryoneers. I'd say they're probably better or more value overall than maybe those two troops, but we don't typically use them a lot, and the metas that they're used in are, fairly uncommon. And even this season, we had tanks and Zookas right off the start. Nobody used Zookas, so we had Zookas and nobody used them throughout the whole season. So, yeah. So that's what I think. So next up, we've got green mines, regular mines. Now, I'm gonna put these guys in the A tier because they're usually pretty impactful. They usually have, again, this season, bad example. They weren't really necessary at all. But most seasons, getting the mines right out of the gates is always a good go-to, and they typically always have a fairly significant impact on your base. They can deter different troops from being used. They can stop critters from being able to get an engine, and they just have I'd say they have a fairly large impact. So I'm going to put them all the way up in A. Next up, we have cannons. Cannons are tough. They probably also need to be A. Very good defense. We get a lot of them. They have a lot of health points. And I'm going to have to start doubling these guys up. They have a lot of health points. And it's a lot of buildings as well. So it helps for multiple reasons. Number one, early in the season, they're usually your best defense against heavy choppers. And usually the best defense against, heavy choppers. Heavy rush. And... yeah, they're good just for slowing down the attacks. You get a lot of them. They have a lot of HP, and they kill heavies once you get them maxed out. So typically, I would say cannons are better to have than machine guns. Obviously, depends a little bit. Where are we gonna put machine guns? We haven't done the one yet. So yeah, cannons, very good defense. Very good defense. I don't know what else to say, but tanks, we're gonna go down in the D. Actually, no, we should put them in C. Sometimes tanks are good to clear, as we all experienced this season. Not the primary troop, not a troop that you want to be using towards the end of the season. Very slow, but sometimes they can get the job done. So yeah. Machine guns. Now, machine guns are kind of on par with cannons, but I'm going to put them at B just because they're not as impactful, I would say. I mean, they're good early on just to do damage and have defenses, but I mean, any sort of defense is kind of good early on. Over the course of the season, machine guns aren't really that scary. They're not, as damaging. You gotta have them. That's why they're in B. They're good. They're not bad. I mean, all defenses, none of them are bad, except sniper towers, kind of. But yeah, I think they're B. They're just a good, somewhat average defense that you gotta get. I mean, landing crafts. I don't know. Landing craft's a weird one because, I mean, it's kind of like flares. It's like you gotta have it. I mean, I'm gonna put them in S tier just because, like, you wouldn't even be able to play warships without upgrading your landing crafts. Like, you have to do it. And I mean, we never experience not having them upgraded because we always do that first thing. But it's arguably the most important unlock and upgrade for the entire season. So next and lastly, we have the gunboat here. So gunboat's tough. I mean, I'm gonna put it in B because it's not always that important of an upgrade. But it is obviously impactful and makes a difference going from 0 to 50 because, obviously we need GB throughout the season, and sometimes that's a good way to do it. So just simply upgrading the gunboat rather than picking a node. So guys, that is the tier list. That is the tier list completed. You guys let me know what you think. I'm sure there's going to be some, comments and disagreements. And like I said, it's hard to do this list because it is kind of subjective. I am a little bit biased towards the path that I usually go. I tried not to, play that out too much, but that's as best as I could do for coming up with the tier list. So you guys let me know what you think. I'm excited to get the feedback from this one, and let me know what you think of that down below in the comment section. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. That is going to wrap up the video today. Make sure to leave a like if you found it interesting, entertaining, or informative. Catch you next one, guys. Chicken out. Back.